Hi everyone, and the topic of today's video is continuous integration and deployment. Continuous integration and deployment is all about releasing software fast, so how we escape these long release cycles, monthly or quarterly, and how we avoid bringing everyone on the team basically in the same room at the end of the release cycle to perform the release. So in order to do that, we need tools, a platform which will bring everyone on the team on the same page in terms of what's the status of the release, what's needed in order to integrate the code, as well as deploy the code. And if you have such tools or platforms, why not deploy the code in a continuous manner? So have this continuous integration and deployment, which will allow us essentially to just push to production even a single commit, okay, as little as that. So to visualize things a bit better, I have this graph right here. So basically the process is as follows. Changes are pushed from local to a remote code repository, and the remote code repository is either connected to some third-party tooling that is responsible for the continuous integration and deployment, or the remote code repository has the tooling built in. So the CI/CD tooling in turn basically reacts to the push on the remote code repository and triggers the execution of the integration checks that is being executed automatically, and in succession, if the integration checks succeed, basically the deployment scripts are being run in an automated manner as well. And this is usually what people refer to as a continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline. Okay, everything is being run in a sequential sort of pipeline in here. And the tool that I'm going to be using today for demonstrating a CI/CD pipeline is GitLab. I'm using GitLab personally for my sort of startups and personal projects and anything enterprise, basically closed source code bases. And as well, it has the CI/CD tooling built in, so it's quite convenient and easy to work with, as well as just demonstrate. Alternatively, you have the option of using GitHub. GitHub, for me personally, is more for open source projects. And in terms of CI/CD, there's a slight bit of complexity in there, since it needs a third-party tool to be connected to GitHub, such as Jenkins, to perform the CI/CD execution. So here we have a visual representation of a GitLab pipeline. Presumably that's a JavaScript code base behind this pipeline. So first we execute some pre-checks. Once they execute successfully, then we follow with some tests, and then we finalize with a deployment on some staging environment. So in this case, the pre-check and the tests are part of the integration phase, and then the single deploy in here is part of the deployment phase. Okay, so integration and deployment are just some guidelines. Okay, and each CI and CD tool and platform itself is implementing and following these guidelines using their own building blocks. Okay, so the building blocks of a GitLab CI pipeline are fundamentally stages and jobs. So stages, each of these columns are represent a stage. So we have here 3 stages: the pre-check stage, the test stage, and the deploy stage. And within a stage, we can have multiple jobs. So in the pre-check stage, we see here we have 3 jobs. Essentially, we have the ESLint job, a job that checks for log files, and a job that does some security checks. Within the test stage, we just have a single job that runs the tests. And within the deploy stage, we have also a single job that does the deployment to a staging environment. Okay, so this is just a visual representation of what has been defined in a config file in GitLab. So let's jump to that config file and let's take a look at that. Okay, so what I have here is a basic NPM project. It's a hello world of Vue.js, and the only things on top of that hello world is are just one single test, and which has the test script as well in order to run it, and a start script which is going to start my application when deployed, in this case on Heroku. Okay, so having these prerequisites, let's take a look at the GitLab config file, which is named .gitlab.ci.yaml. It's defined with YAML syntax, which is quite powerful and simplistic for configuration, which this file is all about. Okay, so we need this file specified in the root of our project, and having this file in there will enable GitLab to trigger our pipeline. So in our case, the pipeline is even more simple in this particular case than the one which I showed you before. Here we just have 2 stages, one test and the other one deploy, and one job per stage. In this case, we have the test job on the test stage and the deploy job on the deploy stage. Okay, and each job has a script, and the script consists of the commands that we want to execute during that stage. In my case, during the test stage, I want to install my dependencies with yarn install. Alternatively, I could have done it with npm. So I'm installing my dependencies with yarn, and then I'm executing my test with yarn test. Okay, in the deploy phase, what I'm doing in the script is basically executing a git push on my Heroku git repository, and that way I'll execute a deployment as simple as that. And I want to run it basically just on master. I want to run my test job on all of the branches, okay, everywhere, no matter is it master or another branch where I'm just testing the feature that I'm working on, and execute the deploy basically whenever I've merged my feature onto master and I know that I'm done with my feature. Okay, so deploy, I just want to do it on master. Alternatively, you could have done some more complex scenarios where you can have deployment on a test environment as well for the features that you're still working on, and have a deployment in production for the features that you're 100% sure that they are complete. Okay, there's many ways that you can scale the complexity of this CI/CD pipeline. For example, I could have added another job on the test stage. So besides this test job, I can have another one. So let's imagine that the first one would run the unit tests called test unit, and the second one would run the integration tests. Okay, that's what IT stands for. So on the test stage, I would have basically 2 jobs in here. Alternatively, I can even increase the complexity by adding another stage as well with a couple of jobs. performing some code quality checks on the check stage, as well as maybe add another build stage, which is going to check for any kind of compilation errors. It's going to build the project. But to keep things simple, let's just have 2 stages with 1 job each. Okay, so I'm going to revert back to the original state of this configuration. So I just had a test job and a deploy job. Okay, and the last part is the image. Okay, first line of code in here. This defines the execution environment of the jobs themselves. This is how, for example, the test job has access to the yarn command. It's because it's running within a Linux image which has Node.js installed. Okay, so to be more precise, that's a Docker container, and these images, these Docker containers, specific to the project that you want to basically run your CI/CD pipeline on. You can find your suitable image if you go to hub.docker.com. In my case, this is a Node image, and if I search for Node, I can find my Node.js image and all of the versions of Node.js. Basically all of the images with different Node.js versions that I can have access to, okay, and that I can use in my GitLab CI configurations. In this case, I'm just using the version 15, okay, should be available somewhere. Okay, just 15. Well, in any case, it's somewhere here, quite hard to find. But having said that, okay, let's proceed to seeing all this in action. Okay, so let's proceed by creating a GitLab project. Create a blank project and call it view CI/CD. Let's make it private. Okay, probably did that for testing already. Let's call it view CI/CD2. Hit create project. Okay, now we have the project created successfully, and we want to push our code to it. But before we do that, since we're going to need 2 environmental variables available to us in the CI process, and those are specifically for the deployment to Heroku, let's proceed and specify those variables. Okay, so it's going to be the Heroku user and Heroku API key in order to authenticate to the Heroku repository where we want to deploy the code to. Okay, so in order to get those environmental variables, let's go to Heroku. This is the sample app that I've created on Heroku, and this is, by the way, the Heroku Git URL where I want to push. It's available if you go to your app under the settings page. Here's the Heroku Git URL where I want to push, and basically I need the Heroku user, which by default is just called Heroku, and the Heroku API key. And for the key, I want to go to my account settings and find the API key, hit reveal, basically copy it from here. Basically I want the naming, okay, to be consistent, so it's Heroku user and Heroku API key. So let's go ahead in back to GitLab, to our project, go to settings, select CI/CD settings, and then I want to find variables, okay, to create those environmental variables available in the CI/CD. So it's Heroku user for the first one, and the value is Heroku. Don't want to protect it for now. Just add the variable, and let's add the second one, Heroku API key. And I'll just copy and paste the key that I found in my account settings in Heroku, and I don't want to protect that either. Okay, so now I added my two environmental variables, which will be available to this deploy job, and that's how I'll be able to accomplish the git push successfully to the Heroku remote repository. Okay, so having that, basically now we can push our code to GitLab. Okay, so what we want to do is to run locally git init. Okay, we want to add everything and then git commit with the init message. Okay, and now we want to add a remote. Okay, let's add the remote, cloning, just copying and pasting my remote address. Okay, just call it origin. Forgot to add that. Okay, and I want to push my master to the origin. Okay, so now that we've pushed directly to master in GitLab, we should be able to observe. If we go under CI/CD, we click on that, there's our pipeline, we push to master, this triggered the test stage to be run, and then because we've pushed to master and deploy is active on master, once the tests are going to be finished, the deploy is going to be run as well. So let's wait for the test stage to be complete. So we see here that the test job completed successfully, succeeded. I've managed to run one test overall, which is what I expected. It passed successfully. And if I go back to my pipeline, I see that the deployment was triggered as well. I can click on it and observe the output. And as well, let's wait until that finishes. Okay, so the deployment job succeeded. We can see here, and this is the terminal output of the deploy job. We see here messages incoming from Heroku with the log of the build and deployment for application, and we can see here that it's been released successfully, and we can access the link and view the deployed application. I can go as well to my Heroku and observe in here that I have a successful build and a successful deploy. Okay, for some reason is unable to display the build output, but I will check that a bit later. Okay, so let's go back to the CI/CD, and we can see here that we have a confirmation, basically a green check mark, that the test stage has been fully completed with just one job test, and the deployment stage has been completed as well with just one stage, which is the deploy stage. Okay, so let's imagine a realistic scenario that after this deployment, I remembered that I wanted to change something. So let's create an issue. Basically, I want to create a new merge request and a new branch, update, do some code updates, and then see what happens to my CI. Okay, so I'm going to create title, maybe a typo or something like that. Let's submit the issue. The workflow here with GitLab is to create a merge request from the issue, which automatically creates a new branch with the name of the issue and the merge request. And when that completes, I can go to my code and I can perform a git fetch, or the IDE can help me with that. In my case, I'm just pressing the refresh, okay, which does a fetch in here. And if I click again on my branches in here, then I can see that I have a new remote, which is called one typo. I can check out that branch, and I can go maybe to some slight modifications, okay? And yeah, at the moment, our app just displays, for example, Vue.js is the best. Maybe we can just revert back to welcome to your Vue.js app. Okay, something like that. Maybe I think it's better to just have this. Okay, so let's commit this. Commit and push. Okay, so this should be able to see here if I refresh that I have a new pipeline running. I can see that by going under CI/CD as well. So there was as well a pipeline whenever I created the new branch and the merge request, okay? We just ran test, okay? And there's a new pipeline as well, because I've just committed a change to this typo branch. Okay, so let's wait until that finishes. So the test job just finished. I can see the logs, the pipeline in here. Click on the job. I see basically it passed successfully. I can see it under CI/CD. It passed as well. And here is basically the only manual action involved, okay, in this CI/CD stage, which is basically me as a developer passing this link to the merge request with the successfully completed pipeline to my team leader in order to perform a basically code review. Okay, so the code review as of today, I think, is the only manual and the only action that involves actually human intervention. Okay, at the moment we don't have any sort of advanced enough tools with advanced enough AI to perform, okay, this kind of code review to check for backwards compatibility and code patterns and all of that, okay? So that's the only part done manually. So let's assume that now I'm the team lead, so I received this link with the merge request. I can proceed to review it, assume that everything is fine, makes sense, then I can approve, additionally mark as ready in order to be able to merge it, and then I can merge it to master. Okay, once I hit merge, a new pipeline is triggered on the master branch, and the new pipeline, since it's running on master, it's executing test as well as deploy on master. Let's wait as well until that finishes. Okay, so we can see that the pipeline completed successfully. We can observe the logs of the deploy. Okay, deployed successfully. Everything went all right. And if we access the app, now we see that we have the updated welcome message. We can see a confirmation on the Heroku homepage of the application that the second build succeeded as well. And if we go to the CI/CD, we can see our last pipeline, which ran when we merged that typo branch into master. So with that, we can conclude this video on CI/CD. We've managed to see for ourselves how everything is ran automatically, with the exception of the code review, which still requires human intervention. Everyone on the team is on the same page, has access to the same GitLab repository where they can go to CI/CD, observe the pipeline, see the status of the pipeline that corresponds to their branch. Is it succeeding? Is it failing? And as well as everyone has a single GitLab CI YAML configuration, which lets everyone know what are the requirements to integrate the code, what are actually the tests needed to be performed, and how are they executed, as well as how the deployment phase happens as well. So that's it. I hope you found it useful, and see you on the next one. Thank you and best of luck.